countdown to reopening of Abuja Airport commences with test run of renovated facilities.
The federal government intensifies rehabilitation of federal roads in the northeast to boost socio-economic development.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we'll be focusing on tribal marks in Nigeria. Later on, the current heat wave.
All right, it was reported that a Nigerian was arrested in an airport abroad because of his tribal marks. Now, the man was detained, according to the report, for over a week, quizzed right and left. Now, according to the information, his tribal marks were so deep and serious that airport security thought this man was a cultist.
Well, Clark, on the face of it, that's funny, but indeed it's not funny. Now, it's also common to hear people refer to some individuals as sergeant, only to discover that the person being referred to is not a member of the armed forces, but certainly a mockery of the stripes on his or her cheeks, which are the same as those that you will find on the stripes of the uniform of a sergeant in the army. Now, these marks have been the butt of various kinds of jokes and reactions by different individuals to those, of course, who carry those tribal marks.
Indeed, Kingsley, that notwithstanding, Nigerians and indeed Africans believe and hold their culture and traditions in very, very high esteem, especially those that they feel very strong about, or of course, they feel make them very unique.
You're quite right, Clay. I mean, that's why we're going into the voyage of a discovery.
Especially for children, you know, where traditional healers do incisions on face or different parts of the body to treat certain imagined ailments, Kingsley. That's what it was.
That's right, that's right. In addition to what you just said, I mean, they said if a baby was ill, you recall that in the past, the 6 childhood killer diseases were very rampant. A child had measles or whooping cough or diphtheria, and then the impression was that this was an affliction from the gods. That had the ADU word of such affliction from the gods that if you had an incision or several incisions on prominent parts of the face of the baby, then of course the evil forces would not be able to.
I'm looking closely at your face to see if
you have to look at yours in the mirror after this program. Well, of course, you know, with time, as we have seen, on account of the fact that essentially culture itself is dynamic, and even all kinds of influences that have come to impact on socio-cultural practices. Facial marks are becoming gradually, as we said earlier, irrelevant, if not extinct.
All right, of course, we know that child rights advocates have also classified, you know, the practice as an abuse of children's rights. You know, the argument is that no permanent or life-impairing decision should be taken on behalf of a child.
All right, now health experts, on the other hand, of course, have expressed concern that the practice of the incision, that's to say, having the tribal marks on the face of a child, expose, you know, the persons to infections such as tetanus, hepatitis B, and even HIV and AIDS because of the use of sterilized instruments to get the incisions right on the face of the persons.
Indeed, all those cumulatively made tribal marks outdated, of course, leading to some moves to even legally outlaw it. Now, already the National House of Assembly, a bill for an act to ban facial mutilation offences, persecution and punishment of offenders has passed to second reading, and that's, of course, 3 weeks ago.
Okay, one question we have to ask is probably rhetorical, considering what we have already discussed in the course of introducing this subject matter. Why have tribal marks certainly become something of a taboo in most parts of the country? Now, are the reasons for having the tribal marks still tenable in this day and age, let's say the 21st century? Or, on the other hand, should parents allow their children to become adults in order to decide whether or not to have tribal marks? And why are tribal marks also ridiculed, whereas tattoos have become, as it were, hip? So, answers to these questions and others shortly as we discuss tribal marks on Good Morning Nigeria today. We'll also be taking a look at the heat wave as a second topic. As you very well know, the heat wave has swept through different parts of the country, and we also have the figures coming out from the Ministry of Health as well as the Center for Disease Control. No fewer than 336 persons have died this year as a result of being infected with cerebrospinal meningitis, which is often common, Claire, at this time of year on account of the heat wave. Although there were some light showers in parts of Abuja yesterday.
Oh yeah, very welcoming if you ask me.
Well, not in all parts, but that's a subject we'll also be taking a look at in the course of the conversation segment on Good Morning Nigeria today. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And if you look close, everything that has been appropriated up to date has now been paid. I also would like to tell you that PATAD are completely up to date.
Executive at all time must look at those laws that are backing up their operations and see those areas that need amendment.
And because when the president speaks, he speaks from his heart, not from his head. And since he has directed the ministers that they must solve this problem, I believe this problem will be solved. This House will not accept any excuse.
Government. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, while receiving a delegation of the Gbaramasu oil and gas producing communities, said there is no going back in government's plan to improve in the region.
Now that there's a political will to do the right thing, we came here to provide the document to show that we are the model. It's now an opportunity to develop our degraded environment and turning the fortune round. The issue of illegal refinery will be over.
This has also filed a fresh case in the Code of Conduct Tribunal against Justice Ademola and wife for living above their means and failure to declare assets. The presidency has therefore appealed what it described as a very strange outcome, considering the underlying facts. The Senior Special Assistant to the President on National Assembly Matters, Senator Ita Inang, has confirmed that there is neither tension nor anything unusual in the relationship between the executive and the legislature in the discharge of their responsibilities for public good. This was at a news briefing in the State House.
I am here to again confirm to you that the relationship between the executive and the legislature is all and very, very perfect, cordial, constitutional, and in all manners usual. And the relationship between His Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Buhari, and the Senate President, Senator Bukola Saraki, is perfect and cordial, personal and official. They are working together, they are in harmony, and they hold consultations on most issues before it arises.
Now to agriculture. The Food and Agriculture Organization is to launch a $20 million support program for 2017 wet season farming in the northeast Nigeria. This is coming as over 170,000 dry season farmers are receiving inputs, irrigation equipment, and livestock support in the region.
The rainy season, we reached some 146,000 people for the rainy season, and for the dry season 2016-2017, we have reached some 174,000 people.
Away from agriculture now, after surmounting the twin problems of insecurity and non-funding for several years, work on federal road projects in the northeast region is progressing in earnest. States in the region are being reconnected for socio-economic development.
It's a work in progress. This
Find political solution to the party's crisis. The meeting suffered hitches as Senator Alimori Sharif walked out before the end of the meeting.
There is no PDP meeting that will take place
under whatever arrangement, that I will not open the session as national chairman. Well, as the national chairman, we move on. We have a program that initiated by Dixon, and we are continuing with that.
Be rest assured that we are determined to solve the problems of our party. We are determined to make sure that the PDP becomes stronger and stronger. And we are determined to make sure that the PDP rise again.
The Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board says by this Thursday it has so far registered close to 900,000 candidates for this year's Unified Tertiary Matriculation of the 1,500,000 targeted 2 weeks to the end of registration. The Registrar, Professor Ishaq Oloyede, said these while discussing with committees of Vice-Chancellors, Provosts and Rectors of tertiary institutions on the matter.
Soliciting the cooperation of our colleagues because we believe that they are the end users of what we are doing, and therefore they should be involved in testing what we are doing, validating what we are doing, critiquing what we are doing, and improving on the facility.
That's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria continues with Claire and Kingsley after this break.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250 to 5 or 0813-2222-106 if you see something.
So, stop storing germs, start adding health.
Be 100% sure.
All right, welcome back to the program. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, time for business news. And the National Bureau of Statistics releases 4th quarter air transportation data. We have details of this and more with Amina Nojem.
Per litre, and the difference transferred to compensate for the cost of bridging between the same template. There had been fears that the pump price of petrol would increase following the increase in bridging costs to appease tanker drivers who went on strike to demand better working conditions. The International Monetary Fund (IMF) says 3 Nigerian banks were undercapitalized with their capital adequacy ratio far below the regulatory threshold, although the IMF did not mention the names of the banks, but said
of some of today's newspapers.
Bayo needs no introduction at this time, but let me just welcome Bayo to another edition of the program. Bayo.
Thank you very much, Claire. Did it rain in your area yesterday?
Absolutely.
The weather is...
Adamawa Governor's Aid says details of the story can be found inside. And then we have 2 other headlines. The first one is a news analysis, by the way. It says 4 bloody days for anti-graft war. Details of that story on page, of that analysis, that's a feature, can be found on page 5. And ex-Naval chief forfeits 1.8 billion naira to federal government. And former NSA Dasuki rearranged, retains bail. And JAMB holds mock UTME tomorrow. And 33 electricity turbines shot, and grid loses 2,591 megawatts. Page 13 for details. Claire.
Yes, Kings. Wish to read it out, Bayo.
Yeah, let's start with the political, trying to find many discordant tunes within the People's Democratic Party. Former President Goodluck Jonathan summoned a meeting trying to reconcile all the difficulties within the party folds. However, the chairman of the party, Modu Sharif, stormed out because he says you cannot have a gathering of PDP and he as a chairman cannot address them. The intention was to harmonize all the reconciliation initiatives and move forward. But the former president was what is called periodic estimates. That's the irony of it all. Those who have prepaid, already paid, and are waiting to consume what they have on their meter tend to be denied power, while those on periodic estimates tend to have power, even while power is being rationed now. That is the observation across board.
Yes, all right, Bayo, let's go to the Punch newspaper to take a look at what stories that it has on its front page. Punch right now is next for us. Punch says El Rufai implementing APC economic plan. That's according to the party chairman, Odigi Oyegu. And importers can clear vehicles and pay duty later. That's according to the Nigerian customs. Details of
that story continues on page 2. There are other trending stories. Top the nameplate, you have My Secret Trial No Longer Tenable. That's from Kano Tells Court. It's on page 4. Now, Senate leadership meets to decide Mago's fate. And Anambra Agog for Chukwemeka Odimogojuku University. All those stories trending on the front page of the authority. All right.
Well, yes, the governors of the Northwest are lamenting that the region is drawing Nigeria back socio-economically, particularly with its high incidence of infant mortality, maternal mortality, ordered the defreezing of the account of belonging to the former First Lady. So win some, lose some. That is the report that Kingsley read earlier on. It was saying 4 bloody days. It was actually referring to the defreezing of the account of Barrister Mike Ezekome, 75 million, which was defrozen, and also the case of Justice Ademola, and the freezing of the Mrs. Jonathan's account, and the third was the Attorney General of the Federation confirming that the sums for which Gosde Orubebe was being charged was actually intact, and the case was ruled out.
For what?
Pardon?
Four bloody days.
It's
an analysis, actually. It's an analysis, an opinion.
Hear the call of change. Stand up, Nigeria. Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. So let the change begin from within. Look at you, Ogeruola. Change begins with you and me. Change begins with me.
Right, you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria. Time for us now to proceed with our conversation on weather predictions for 2017. But before then, let's join Timothy Yusuf for this background report.
The tradition of tribal marks dates back to the 14th century and forms part of the rich culture of the Black economic activities. The mere thought of the condition sends shivers down the spine of many people, especially when electric power outage continues to make it difficult to put on electronic weather cooling system. Experts say it is the season of the year when hot weather, heat and ailments associated with it make life miserable for people. With the hot weather, dry conditions and dusty environment, many persons would have come down with dehydration, heat rashes, and respiratory ailments among others, they say. Though the nation's hospitals are not filled with patients suffering heat stroke and heat exhaustion, medical experts said the outbreak of meningitis, which has claimed
onset of the rainy season in most parts of the country. However, we are going to have an early cessation also, and this will lead to a kind of shorter growing season. The implication there is that the amount of rainfall may not be normal. Normal in this sense, we're talking about 30 years average. So coming back to your question, the season, as it were, is progressively, changing from dry to wet season, beginning from the southern. The life, the comfort zone to be very, very uncomfortable, because the two combination will not allow you to perspire very well. And so the comfort of human beings and even animals is being affected by these two parameters.
We know there's been so much talk about climate change, it's everywhere, but people are still, ignorant of the changes in the weather forecast, particularly the heat waves, because everywhere you...
The human activities include burning of fossil fuels, deforestation, and so on and so forth, because this leads to an increase in the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Of course, the greenhouse gases are necessary because they are life-enabling. Under natural creation, the greenhouse gases regulate the temperature over the Earth's surface, thereby making it comfortable for human beings and animals. But now we have a situation whereby the amount of greenhouse gases Capricorn. So it moves gradually as we are progressing into the northern hemisphere summer. So at this point in time, it's directly over us. So by July, August, at the peak of the rainfall season, it would have reached, the maximum, again, latitude northwards, which is Tropic of Cancer at 23.5 degrees, north. So these are oscillations. So at a point in time, the sun will be over us, and it coincides with the season also. By the way, the sun itself is the driver of all the activities. The climate system itself is the sun that drives it. February is the second warmest February in the last 137 years. Last year was the highest. They have seen that the average temperature of the Earth's surface has gone up by as high as 1.3 degrees Celsius. It's not actually easy for those who are not meteorologically inclined to understand this value that I mentioned. But to come to the other point, temperatures have gone as far as 43, 42 degrees Celsius over the extreme north, Sokoto, Maiduguri, Yelwa. If it is reached, some bacterial diseases tend to be active, and that threshold is 39.5 degrees Celsius. So we are now talking about 43 over extreme north, which is, in fact, we have reached what is called the extreme heat stress, because by literature, extreme heat stress ranges between 37 and 42 degrees Celsius. So if some places are experiencing 43, they are already heat stress to occur.
The so-called August break in the past?
Apart from this August break will only affect the southern and up to maybe the latitude of Kwara State in the prediction. But the middle belt areas and the far north will experience dry spells of almost 14 to 20 days, which is quite a long period. So there is need to plan for an entry measure of irrigation, for example, and then talking about also the early cessation of the rainfall.
International and start times.
Over and out.
Brought to you by Glow.
Welcome to the new speed of life.
A hectic lifestyle or overeating can cause a burning pain in your chest. That's up. Take Gaviscon. One dose relieves in 3 minutes to soothe the pain of heartburn.
You caught a glimpse of the background report on tribal marks from Timothy Yusuf. Let's have it now before we get on with our conversation.
The tradition of tribal marks dates back to the 14th century and forms part of the rich culture of the black race, Nigeria inclusive. Experts say at a point in time, societies and people attached so much importance to tribal marks that they were considered sacrosanct. Various reasons ranging from religious beliefs, identity, beauty, and many more were responsible for the tribal marks. These were passed down from generation to generation as a societal norm, as members of the same village, family, or lineage had unique tribal marks. Parents were also said to use tribal marks to lend credence to the legitimacy of their children. The sizes, shapes, and designs of tribal marks vary, with some marks running as parallel grooves from forehead through the temple and cheek to the chin, and are complemented with accessory marks from the medial contours of the eyes downward. For example, vertical marks, one on each cheek, identify Ondo men and women. 3 horizontal marks on each cheek reveal the identity of Oyo people. To those literate in markings, a mere glance at someone's face is sufficient to read that person's ethnic group, town, or even family. However, tribal marks are fast fading away due to a lot of reasons. The pain and risk of infection, along with scorn and discrimination the child may face later in life, are all factors that make many reject facial marking. Human rights issues and extant laws have also restricted such practices. The recent bill prohibiting tribal marks that has passed second reading at the Senate is one of such. The support and popularity of the bill, analysts say, is a clear indication of public opinion on tribal marks. Why has this tradition, widely accepted in the past, now facing such a challenge? What should the different ethnic groups do to protect their unique identity, other than the tribal marks? How true is it that the practice infringes on the right of children and dangerous to health? These are some of the issues guests on NTA Good Morning Nigeria will be discussing shortly.
All right, thank you very much there, Timothy Yusuf, for that background report. Now we have with us, the truth is, yes, some have marks, but with time, the scars tend to also recede, and then, they're less visible, except, of course, when the incisions were very deep, and then the wounds didn't heal properly. That's precisely what we're taking a look at. Let's begin the conversation by going back to our Benin studios, where Professor Benson Osadolo was introduced a moment ago. Now, Professor Osadolo, of course, we see pictures from different parts of the world, whether amongst Aborigines or particularly amongst us here in different ethnic groups, people have tribal marks. Do we have a sense of the origin or significance or importance of tribal or facial marks?
As far as history is concerned, and particularly with Africa, I have read in some works that tribal marks originated during the colonial period, which is not true. There is evidence to suggest that as far back as the 14th or even the 15th century, Africans had started the idea of identification and beautification marks, both on their faces and their bodies, both in the front and at the back. If you look at the case of Benin, which has not been shown on television, we call it in Benin the Iwu marks, or the Iwu facial and body marks in Benin. Its origin began in the 15th century, during the reign of Oba Eware I. And it has continued since then up till the 1940s, when it was outlawed in Benin. However, what Benin did was to reenact this kind of beautification and identification in a kind of dress we now call Iwu dress in Benin. Unfortunately, I'm not wearing it because I don't have one of them, and I tend to do, maybe the nearest time. But if you go to Yoruba, because what you showed a while ago, it's actually reflected on the Yoruba nation. The Yoruba nation has a lot of ethnic groups, particularly those in the northern frontiers, Oyo, Ogbomosho, towards the Ilorin, and those in the eastern frontier, Ekiti, Ondo, etc., and those in the western frontier, the Egba. Now, you find this kind of marks, trying to identify specific families, try to identify specific patrilineal lineages, also try to identify royal families. Now, it has its origin, particularly from the protection of citizens from invasion, from war, from kidnapping, particularly after the 16th century, when slave raiding and slave trade became very prominent, with Europeans. And to ensure that their own citizens or their own people or people from their own ethnic group were protected, these specific marks were given. And it has continued over time up till the beginning of colonial rule and perhaps towards the time that Nigeria attained independence. But still, unfortunately, today, you find that in some societies, very deep marks, it's a pride. They took pride in it. But however, with the issue of modernization, with the issue of international campaign, people are saying, oh, that is bad. It's bad because it no longer serves a purpose that is served at that particular point in time.
Prof, I also would have asked you, if there was wisdom in the adoption of such tribal marks, because from the west, east, north, and south, tribal marks were common practices. They were used either for, like you rightly
saw the clips a while ago, some very frightening, but some very beautiful. In the case of Benin, it was quite admired by even the royal family in Benin. The citizens admired it because in the case of Benin, for example, the beautification marks, identification marks, was not was a privilege to the citizens or the indigenous, but foreigners and slaves were not eligible for it. Again, that tells you the wisdom of our people in Benin at the time those marks were.
That child, and I took picture, I interviewed the parents, and wicked enough, the parents had no tribal mark. Both parents had no tribal mark. And one of the parents is even a master's holder and a lecturer in the university. So I now begin to wonder that, this an educated person who is intellectually mobile, is sound. In this age and time, why would any sound-minded character inflict such a pain? So you don't actually need to inflict pain and all that on a child at this age and time to identify a child. There are other civilized means of identification today. Secondly, I came to understand that these local surgeons who just design the faces of these kids do not have primary first aid or medical education. Most of these sharp objects they use in designing this face are not sterilized. Cannot speak, cannot question, cannot ask. So automatically you are infringing on the right of that child, because most kids, when they grow up, there's always the problem of, there are a lot of social problems. I had a friend who had a lot of design on his tummy when we were in school. He grew up, was dating a particular lady, proposed to the lady, but the day the lady discovered that he's got some designs on his tummy, she left him. So psychologically, you have inflicted a permanent psychological problem from a humanitarian point of view, and for us to say, okay, I'm fortunate I didn't have one because I would have sued.
That's another matter, but I'm concerned with this law now. Do we really need another law? You already have this, prohibition in the Child Rights Act. So why do we have to, legislate?
That's general. That's general. Just like the constitution of a country is a small document, but you need other laws in acts to challenge some specific challenges in the society. So this is not going to be the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, but it's a legislation. The more legislation you have, the better the society.
Not on my face.
No, not on any of your faces, actually. I know you said you had one by the side, but obviously it wasn't put because I guess it's the Yoruba tradition that there's certain places in Yoruba land that they actually put that because they want the mark to actually be more visible than others. I think it's quite barbaric, and the trauma any child has to go through, it's a process that nobody should have to go through it. The professor was also talking about tattoos. I think as an adult, if you get a tattoo, it's a choice because you now have the choice, but a child does not have that choice. Again, this might be because we have bad health system in Nigeria, so with the rural areas, they don't have access to healthcare or doctors or medical practitioners, so therefore the parents feel that they have to resort to traditional medicine. And this is the one that I think now, even if, okay, the beautifying part and the looking for someone, kidnapping, those ones are ancient matters. But now to the senator, my question is that for this medical reason, what do we do for a parent who feels that this is the only way to save their child's life? I mean, I'm not for tribal marks, but for this
means, all we need is awareness. A man with a headache goes into the wilderness, the bush, to get some herbs and all that. If you educate him that, it's the stress of going to get all these herbs put together, boil them, sieve them, then take them, can be a Panadol in the comfort of your living room, can take care of it. And if he applies it and sees the results, he won't do that again. So I want to believe that the federal government, as a matter of utmost necessity and urgent.
When they were really putting the marks on the baby, because there is no way with the marks, there will be blood will come out and there will be pain. So I feel, to me, I don't really like it.
I would like to have this tribal mark again, and it's just like a mark, or just like a mark on somebody that they say you are from this, you are from this. Even it can differentiate you from this rubber mark. It's not even good for me personally. If you do something and they say you are from this place, you are from this place, so I don't want it. Unless everybody's the federal government.
People.
And Adejo Joseph tweets, it is called tribal, so it is for a purpose, to identify themselves. I don't see anything wrong in that.
And Otega, a same way that tweets, said we should learn how to promote our way of life as Africans and Nigerians. Now the tribal marks tell much about us. This is a good thing.
And Sunny Michael Omakuji tweets, the primitive idea surrounding tribal mark is no longer tenable in this modern society of ours. It should be voluntary.
And on grounds of sex, religion, tribe, culture, tradition, or there's no the Constitution is outrageously against discrimination. And if you say tribal mark, already is a form of discrimination. Because if I'm a Kanuri person and you are for a job interview, already
of the bill, take it, on its merit. Is this likely in any sense, if passed, if it becomes law, is it going to claw back at what we find as tribal marks in Nigeria, considering the kind of legislation or various pieces of legislation that we have in Nigeria, which haven't dealt with some of the major challenges we still have? Child labor, for instance. You have all of that provided for in the Child Rights Act, saying, there should be no child labor, but you still see children on the streets, they are hawking, female genital mutilation.
Identity. We want to see ourselves as a people and as a nation. Whether you are living in Maduguri, or you are living in Ogbomosho, or you are living in Sokoto, let there not be anything that would distinguish you or discriminate against you and another person. The other issue you raised has to do with social life and customs. Yes, that we cannot take away from societies. Historically speaking, customs, traditions, they are associated with various societies. And over time, if they have good public enlightenment and education, a distinguished Nigerian senator who is thinking in the 21st century what people are still doing that is wrong, is humiliating, and is discriminating. We need to stop it. Traditions are traditions. There are certain traditions that we can continue with, some traditions we discard. In history, we talk about change and continuity. It served a purpose in the past. That purpose is no longer relevant in the present age. And of course, in the future, it will no longer be relevant. So why do we continue with it? Why do we still need it? So before the tribal marks were introduced, the society lived the way they were. It was introduced and they have still continued. For example, look at some families. Like somebody said a while ago, every first child in the family has those marks. If you are number 2, number 3, number 4, you may not have it. But every first child has that mark. Today, it's no longer necessary. We talk about what patrilineal heritages.
Let's have some compassion on the young ones.
AU Steve tweets, I don't see any problem associated with tribal marks. You know, most people you see today are alive because of those marks.
Now, Franklin Ofoma tweets, tribal marks will be easy to outlaw, but my concern is in the enforcement.
And Umar Mena tweets, now said tribal marks, on tribal marks. I loved one Yoruba girl, but unfortunately my parents rejected her because of her tribal marks. And then, of course, it goes on there, yes.
All right, now Jimmy Q tweets,
as well as the tweets have also touched on tattoos. I mean, you find them in all kinds of places. But it's a famous famous athlete, of course, is retired now. Mike Tyson, of course, you know, has a Maori tattoo on part of his one part of his face. That is the temple there. But of course, even after the tattoo, his career went down before he eventually hung up. It was beaten silly in 2002 by Lennox Lewis. But let's get further views now from our Vox Pop on what they think about tattoos.
So I think tattoos remains a personal choice for the adults.
One, I want to say that I also argue in that line that one, tattoo is not for the purpose. They have two different distinct reasons and purposes. The tribal mark have historical, cultural antecedents, but tattoo is not for identification. Nobody's putting tattoo so that they'll be identified as coming from a particular region. Become responsible. But what I want to say quickly before we round up is this: that I do believe in the preservation of culture and tradition. And today, Arungu Fishing Festival is gaining international attention. The Calabar Carnival is gaining international attention. The Ovie Omo Osese by the Ogorimagongo people is getting. So we have a lot of cultural, traditional heritage that we can preserve. Dresses, even in costumes, in different cultural heritage that we can preserve, but not those that are barbaric and infringing.
Unfortunately, I don't have it to show to the world about it. Let societies change. Tattoos, piercing, markings on the body or whatever, they have their own significance at a particular point in time. Let us not overflow the issue.
Benson Osadol, I'm sure there'll be an opportunity for you to wear that